Hi guys, you're welcome, and this is Joe Daily Brief. What we are doing today is the breaking news that happened. That was yesterday. When we were going to sleep, yesterday I got that alert and I knew something was what was happening. So that is what we know currently. What we are coming to do is just break down what's really happened, what has happened for the past hours. So it started somewhere around 2 a.m. in Venezuelan time. So the news is the U.S. has captured Venezuela's leader, Maduro, and here is what BBC's this CNN is reporting. So President Trump announced earlier Saturday or this morning that the U.S. carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela, and that President Nicolas Maduro and his wife had been captured, a stunning development that plunged the country into uncertainty after weeks of spiraling tensions. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country, he wrote. So this is when this thing came up, or he posted this on Truth Social. So that is what we know. And Venezuelan Vice President Rodriguez said in an audio call with state-run VTV that the government doesn't know the whereabouts of Maduro and First Lady Cecilia Flores, demanding immediate proof of life from Trump administration. So a CNN witnessed several explosions and heard thousands of sounds across the city that is in Venezuela. So what we'll be doing is we'll be giving you some of the visuals. What we'll be doing is we'll be giving you some of the visuals for that. But what I want us to read, or what I want us to get notice of, is you first, what we'll do is we would get into what the president said this morning. But 1 minute, I'll be back. U.S. hit several locations in Venezuela. So this is what CNN is reporting, that U.S. hit several locations in Venezuela. That was early morning, and this were some of the areas. The attack was carried out in early hours of Saturday, January 3rd. Strikes verified by CNN. So this is Bolivarian Navy Military Academy, and these are some of the strikes, right? This where CNN is reporting that some of these places were being striked. And after that, what I want us to just go through is several of the city were without power. So some of the videos that came out shown that there were smokes, there were explosions around, and we would look at some of those explosions, because today what I want us to do is we go through the stories and also some of the reasons why U.S. is even attacking Venezuela. We want to go through it, some of the reports from U.S. today. I've been reading around and I've been scanning through various media outlets in even when you go back to X, we have a lot of them over there. So we were going through all those ones for us to know what really happened and why US even is attacking Venezuela. So let's take a look, or let's take, if we could read this. So after being captured, Maduro and his wife Cecilia were taken to New York to face charges. The large-scale strike against Venezuela was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, President Trump said. Attorney General Pambandi called Maduro and his wife two alleged international narco traffickers in post X on So let's take a, so these are some of the pictures that came up earlier this morning. What I want to do is when these issues started, NBC News, partners from NBC also reported these issues, this news, and what I want us to do is just look at this when they started reporting it. So I would want us to just watch some of the videos from NBC News. This was what was happening earlier this morning when reports broke that Maduro has been captured and multiple explosions in Venezuela. So we can take a listen to that.
The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow, Maduro. According to the president. There will be a news conference, he says, today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. He then punctuates it, as he often does, with thanks for your attention to this matter. It is signed by the president. So again, I want to repeat two of the key sentences in there. He confirms that the U.S. carried out this large-scale strike against Venezuela, and he says that its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. So, according to the President of the United States, Nicolas Maduro is no longer on the ground in Venezuela. It leaves open a bit of...
So this was when, that's earlier this morning, 5:24 a.m. earlier this morning. And this is when the confirmation was happening. But we knew yesterday night that something of that sort has happened. But it happened around 2 a.m. in Venezuelan time. So
the vacuum there in terms of leadership. It's not entirely clear who is effectively running that country at this time. I just want to get your immediate reaction to the news that we are hearing again in a True Social post from the President of the United States.
Means that this was a regime change operation and that this was had some degree of coordination. Witnesses earlier described helicopters. Witnesses described low-flying aircraft. I was taken aback by what you just said, that Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been taken into custody. That means there were either local forces on the ground or local forces working with Americans to hand over the leader and bring him out of the country. An extraordinary development. We just saw a regime change operation take place quickly in the early hours. You said, does it leave a power vacuum? I know that for the last several months, there have been conversations going on through intermediaries with the generals and the top leaders around Maduro, trying to convince them to turn on him, to hand him over, to allow him to be arrested, and to get him to use the phrase what we had heard earlier, to cry uncle. He wasn't crying uncle, and now it seems he was arrested. An extraordinary development. Now, Richard, it started out with some boat strikes, and then to a military campaign on land, and now a military operation and an arrest.
And Richard, that, of course, it opens up a lot.
Development.
I apologize for interrupting again. That breaking news that, according to the President of the United States, the U.S. has now successfully launched, carried out, as he says, what was a large-scale strike attacks in and around Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela. Beyond that, he says that the U.S. has captured, and flown out of the country Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And Richard, I bring this up because it's significant for a variety of reasons. Nicolas Maduro, only a matter of days ago, said in a new interview that he was open to negotiating with Washington to combat drug trafficking, the first sign that this pressure campaign was taking its toll. The questions that it raises now are, was there any resistance by Maduro when this took place? Was this in some way negotiated with those around him? Those are questions we have on the ground. As you say, the U.S. swept in and did this under the veil of darkness. It took place very quickly. We don't know what may have occurred on the ground right now, but it raises a lot of real questions about
videos,
what, if any conversations did exist in any form with Nicolas Maduro, or if this was the first contact when, in effect, the United States military was knocking knocking on his door and sweeping up him and his wife and taking them out of the country?
Noriega, people, those who remember the story, he was accused of being a narco trafficker, refused to leave. U.S. forces swept in and grabbed him. To answer some of the questions, I know for the last several months there have been contacts through intermediaries with Maduro's inner circle to try to convince him to leave the country. He was not interested. He was resisting. This pressure campaign has been escalating. First with the boats, then with President Trump declaring him a narco-terrorist, then all of the U.S. military buildup in the region, the aircraft carrier strike groups, the submarines, the drones, aircraft. Then, shortly before New Year's, a land strike allegedly carried out by the CIA. Very few details about what was hit then. And now, overnight, a capture operation. You don't do a capture operation without attacking some military sites, because you need to clear the airspace, you need to clear away air defenses, you need to protect the helicopters and the troops that are going in to remove the person you're trying to arrest. So the U.S., President Trump, just decided to pull a Panama II for New Year's and effect regime change in Venezuela. An extraordinary development.
Okay, so that was the chief foreign correspondent for NBC, who was giving his thoughts on what really happened. Let's listen to a journalist on the ground when this thing happened earlier this morning, what he had to report again.
Anna, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. First of all, how are you, and are you safe?
So far, yes, we are safe. We're in the eastern side of Caracas, and apparently all the strikes or alleged strikes are happening in the part of the eastern side, but also in the center of Caracas.
Okay, tell me what you're learning so far, whether it's from people you know or what you've experienced directly.
Yes, well, it all started, I'm going to start with what I experienced, what I witnessed. It started around 2 a.m. Local time. I heard a very, very large bang, an explosion, and all the windows started vibrating, all the windows shaking, not only on my apartment, but the rest of the area as well. And immediately after that, I witnessed a large a tower of smoke coming from what looked like the center of Caracas, and then, you know, bright lights and other explosions. What I was hearing most was the sound of what I believe were aircrafts or helicopters flying above the capital city. And immediately when I started witnessing that, I received reports from other colleagues, family members, friends, known ones that were seeing and hearing exactly the same in different parts of Caracas. Also, just minutes later, maybe half an hour later, I started seeing reports of exactly the same thing, but on the coastal area of Venezuela, in La Guaira, specifically in the port of La Guaira, which is the main port of Venezuela, where all ships and cargo arrives. And there are videos that are not confirmed yet, because we have no confirmations of specifically each video that we're looking at that was being shared on WhatsApp, on Twitter, on social media. We have no confirmation of that, but there's specific video that is shown in La Guaira. I can recognize the streets of La Guaira. I don't know when that was recorded, at what time, but you can see the devastation of the port of La Guaira, what was left after that bombing. And also something very that is common between all of the reportings and my own experience is that people are very, very scared and nervous about what's not only what's happening, but what is going to happen next.
Do you have family in that area? Have you been able to speak to them if you do, and are they safe?
they're all safe, and my family, my friends, they're all safe in around the area. I worry for the people that are near the military bases that were allegedly attacked, and I repeat allegedly because we don't have specific confirmation of any casualties or material devastation from any authority, not only government authorities, but also from local authorities. We have no confirmation from the firemen or police in any of the municipalities that were hit by whatever is happening right now.
And I know we have heard of reports of loss of power. Have you seen that from your own experience?
Yes, I witnessed from where I'm standing. You can see behind me there's like a small mountain, and on the other side at my right there is I'm sorry, I'm just getting a lot of reports right now, so there's a lot of information that's coming. So I just need to be very clear that there is no confirmation on what is happening and what happened after the detonations from any authority so far. So I was telling you at my right, I have a clear view of part of a working class neighborhood of Petare and part of the center of Caracas. And both areas are still without any electricity. There were reports of electricity failures and blackouts, not only in La Guaira, which is the port of Venezuela, but also in the places nearby military bases, La Carlota and the Defense Ministry in the center of Caracas.
Okay, so you can see that directly, some of the neighborhoods behind you, and I know that you haven't been able to. Have you been able to speak to anyone on the ground in those neighborhoods besides your family?
No, there's no. The communications are really complicating the situation right now. So what we know, what we first learned was through not only social media but through WhatsApps and videos and pictures shared on WhatsApp, but without any kind of context. Because of course, this is our regular citizens. We're just. We don't understand, and they don't understand what they're looking at, and they're just filming and sharing the information. So that is why we have so much footage, but we have no specific context. We don't know when, who recorded it, where exactly, what was happening, what happened before and after they stopped recording. So it has been difficult for me specifically to talk to anyone around military areas and around those neighborhoods. But I do know that people in La Guaira reported that they heard explosions and they saw the explosions. And then this video was, as I was telling you, showed allegedly what would be the devastation of the port of La Guaira.
When was that the last round of explosions that you heard? I know that we are hearing reports that the first round was heard just before 2 a.m. Local time in Caracas.
Yes, exactly right, as you said. Around 2 a.m., I heard the first explosions, and people, shared the same experience as me. And then the last ones I heard was about maybe 40 minutes ago. But again, I am in the eastern side of the capital of Caracas. Now, in the center of Caracas, there are reports of people still hearing not only the other bangs, other explosions, or what they believe are explosions, but also the sound of planes. I heard that up until like 20 minutes ago. I was hearing planes flying over, or what I believe were planes, because that was the loud sound flying over where I am, and going straight to apparently to the center of Caracas. People are reporting exactly the same, but I haven't experienced any new detonation, any new explosion so far. And but it doesn't mean, of course, that this is not happening any other way.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on.
So what I'll do is this is what's This was a reporter in Venezuela giving what she saw and what she witnessed. So this is an eyewitness account from the reporter and what she heard earlier this morning. So what I'll do this morning, the president himself, President Trump, gave a press conference. So that is what we will be listening for now, so that we also get an overview or a press briefing from the president when he was confirming the issue to the press this morning from Florida, West Palm Beach.
Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. It's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship. They'll be heading to, ultimately, New York. And then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat. But we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives, they walk to doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Raising Cane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, time and place to layer effects for a single purpose, to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel so, as the President said, they could be brought to justice. And as the President said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the President to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the President ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire Joint Force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the President said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other method.
We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but it's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way.
One thing I'm getting from this press conference is the details that the general gave, right? I think it's something, as he said, no country has ever done what the U.S. did or what the U.S. military has been doing. And the detail that he gave, more than 100 flights, like helicopters, whatever, call it, be like land, sea. So that is the defining moment for me, like the detail that it means they've planned this very well. So what I would do from this press conference, I'll also give you some visuals, but what I will do next is show you how they deployed some of the CIA officials or CIA officers in Venezuela way back, as I said, way back in December, November, to track Maduro, like his move, where he's going, his pet, like his hobbies and those kind of stuff. So let's listen to the
It should
president.
be, as you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly, and we're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
Yes, it's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
Would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be for a period of time the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead. I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be...
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
Well,
going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is
Well,
about
he
that.
has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And, yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Rubio,
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We went there. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
People to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. The safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, did we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it. Go ahead, finish.
To be in the time being right now. Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something.
Okay, so what I'll do is, so we have, should I say, breaking news that I could report. Let me see if I could get this going. Yes. So this is what we currently have. That Maduro has arrived in U.S. So this is his flight. What I'll do is
the door of the plane. You see some of these what appear to be FBI and DEA officials on the stairs. I should note, obviously, it's getting dark. The video is getting grainier as we speak here from the air, so it's getting tougher and tougher to see. But you can see the light illuminating that doorway from inside the plane. And, Richard, do we have any sense at all at what might be happening just beyond that doorway?
Well, it was quite clear that because of the first image that that President Trump posted of Maduro in custody, bound, no longer
after being extracted from Caracas in that massive military operation that took place in the dark of the overnight hours at about 2 o'clock this morning in Caracas. Of course, Maduro, his wife, removed to the United States to face a number of charges in a sweeping indictment brought by the Southern District of New York, alleging him, accusing him essentially of running this narco-terrorism conspiracy related to cocaine trafficking, related to partnering with various drug cartels as well. Dramatic moments and dramatic images here from Stewart International Airport in New York. We understand that Maduro will be, according to sources, booked and processed moving forward, put behind bars to face these charges in the United States after this controversial move by the Trump administration to extract him from Venezuela. I want to get to our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Kuby. And Court, I understand that you have been watching some of these live images coming in here. Help us understand what we're seeing and where this goes.
We're expecting to see him and his wife walking off that plane at some point, and there's a lot of questions of exactly where they will go next. The indictment is in Southern District of New York, so we do expect that is where this will be adjudicated, so potentially booked and prosecuted ultimately. But the real question is, what will the next movement be? Will they take them from Stewart, where we're seeing this plane, put them on a helicopter potentially and bring them into New York City, or what? These are all the questions that we've been trying to get answers to in our breaks here.
And I should note that
remember the moment, and this is one of them. It began mysteriously. It began in the darkness hours with these reports of airstrikes, some sort of military activity. The U.S. wasn't confirming what had happened. We were all scrambling to try and figure out what was going on. It was quite clear initially that the U.S. had carried out some sort of military action because military bases were under fire, but the U.S. wasn't acknowledging it, and we were trying to piece together information while being cautious. And then no reaction from the Pentagon, no reaction from the White House, silence, because that has become the Trump administration's signature policy. They want Trump to announce everything himself personally. I was expecting, and many people I was speaking to, assumed that this was some sort of U.S. military action against the military, against Maduro's government, another part of this escalating pressure campaign that we've been seeing now play out over the last several months. It started out with boats, and then it went to seizing of a tanker, and then the acknowledgement of one somewhat mysterious CIA-led land attack, and it seemed like there was another escalation, another way to pressure Maduro, and specifically pressure the people around him to leave power. And then President Trump put that post on social media saying that Maduro had been captured. And then suddenly all the pieces started to come together. Why were witnesses hearing in Caracas helicopters, low-flying aircraft? And the scope as over the day of this operation began to reveal itself. And now we know what happened, or we have a much better idea of what happened. This was a snatch and grab operation, and the United States just carried out a regime change in Venezuela under the guise of counter narcotics, counter drug operation. But when you listen to President Trump, mostly he was talking about oil, and mostly he was talking about the U.S. position in the world and the U.S. Position in the Americas. And when you listen to President Trump in his remarks afterwards, so the first part was the surprise. The second part was perhaps even bigger of a surprise, which was that he said, we may be just starting there was a connection to Cuba. There's a he talked about the Monroe Doctrine, which is about U.S. Dominance in the space of the Americas. So we may just be at the beginning here. Why did I say this is a historic day? This is one of those days when you want to wake up and pay attention yet again, Hallie, is we may just be starting a new phase in Latin America. It began with this snatch and grab operation with Maduro, the President Trump's trying to run the country from afar. He says that he's going to be in charge and his administration is going to be in charge, but they're going to use local Venezuelans. It didn't suggest that there would be boots on the ground, but that the Trump administration will be running the affairs of the country, and suggested that other countries may follow. This was much more than just a regime change, or much more than just the grabbing of a terrorist leader or a narco leader. This was about asserting U.S. dominance across the Americas.
Richard, as we are watching now, again, this live image here out of Stewart Airport in New York, you see the activity there at the door of the plane. You see some of these what appear to be FBI and DEA officials on the stairs. I should note, obviously, it's getting dark. The video is getting grainier as we speak here from the air, so it's getting tougher and tougher to see, but you can see the light illuminating that doorway from inside the plane. And, Richard, do we have any sense at all at what might be happening just beyond that doorway?
Well, it was quite clear that because of the first image that President Trump posted of Maduro in custody, bound, no longer a free man, the idea was to exploit that image to show Venezuelans proof of life that the U.S. had actually captured him, that he was still alive, which is something that the Venezuelans had been demanding, because Maduro's regime is still more or less intact, but it is very much diminished, and according to President Trump, is now singing a different tune and is willing to make a deal. We will see if that actually proves to be true. But it seems that they want to make him a prisoner. So I would not be surprised if when he is brought out of that plane, even though he is not considered a dangerous criminal, if you're going to see him continue to be handcuffed, continue to be treated like a prisoner to show dominance, because that is what this whole, I don't want to say exercise, but that is what a lot of this, the political theater part seems to be about President Trump showing that he means what he says. And if you listen to the press conference, that was something that a talking point that was repeated time and time again by Defense Secretary Hegseth, by Marco Rubio, that President Trump is different than the others and that he should be taken seriously. So what's happening now with Nicolas Maduro is it seems that he was snatched from his palace. According to President Trump, he was on his way to some sort of reinforced safe room, couldn't get the door closed in time, was grabbed by special forces, and is now going to be treated like a prisoner. And the administration said time and time again, his fate didn't have to be like this, which is a message to other leaders, potentially the leadership in Cuba, potentially a message to the president of Colombia, a man who I interviewed not very long ago, and who he didn't defend Maduro, but he has sometimes been seen as following a similar left-wing socialist agenda, Cuban-backed agenda. So it is a message to the people of Venezuela that their former dictator is now no longer in charge, and a clear message to other Latin American leaders and really any other of Trump's enemies that this is a fate that could happen if they defy him.
And Richard, to your point, the Secretary of State saying that Maduro was provided, in Marco Rubio's words, multiple very generous offers, but instead, according to Rubio, chose to play around, which the Trump administration says is why you're seeing the images here. To your point, Richard, on the picture, the single photograph, we're not going to show it at the moment because we want to stay on this live shot here, but the picture of Maduro in the dark sunglasses, in the cuffs. We know that this is a president. We saw it in the first term. We've seen it so far in the second term, to whom optics matter. The images matter. What is portrayed on television screens around the world matters. And this is an image that is certainly rocketing around the world tonight.
And if you remember, the press conference was delayed somewhat. He was supposed to speak, I believe it was 11 o'clock local time, if my memory serves correct, but he was delayed. And it was only until after that image was posted, and then suddenly everyone was ready and was ready at the podium. They wanted the world to see that photo first. They wanted Venezuelans to see that photo first before they made any statements, before they took any questions about what went down in Venezuela, because the image is worth 1,000 words, as the proverb says. But the image here does speak volumes. It shows that the man who just weeks ago was brushing off the idea that he would end up in U.S. custody, brushing off the idea that the U.S. would actually put boots on the ground in his country. Nicolas Maduro was handing out guns to the local militias, arming the population, telling them to get ready to defend the country against the imperialist capitalists. He was telling people that what is his response? He wants global peace. He was quoting the John Lennon song, Imagine a world where there can be peace. He didn't seem to be taking it seriously. And now that image trying to show others who might not be taking threats seriously that they need to. But we do not know if this will be as easy as President Trump says. President Trump outlined a very rosy picture that Venezuela is this country with the world's largest oil reserves, that it was exporting drugs to the United States, and that Venezuelans and Americans are going to get rich together, and that for the time being, it will be the Trump administration governing the country with some compliant Venezuelans. He didn't explain how that is going to happen, when it is going to happen, or outline its chances of success. But it is an ambitious project, and one which I said at the beginning may just be starting. That's right. He talked about Cuba. There's talk about Mexico. There's talk about the Monroe Doctrine dominating the Americas, the space of the Americas. We are very early into this new year, still early in the Trump presidency, and I think we are starting to see what may be the Trump doctrine.
Richard Engel, our thanks to you. I know you're going to stay close to your camera as we are watching and waiting for more activity here on this plane, possibly maybe a charter. We do know from sources, multiple sources to NBC News, that both Maduro and his wife, both of whom were extracted from Venezuela in that military operation, are on that plane and will be presumably, perhaps, stepping off. You see the lights have now illuminated on the stairs there as night falls in New York. Again, this is about 70 miles north of New York City. That indictment against Maduro and his wife brought by prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. I want to bring in our moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, who is joining us now. And Kristen, this is a significant foreign policy moment for President Trump. It is an expansion of his, as Richard was talking about, of his doctrine as it relates to the Western Hemisphere. It is also a controversial domestic political moment for the president, too, as he is facing criticism, not just from Democrats on the left, but from some in his own party as well. As we are looking at this, again, you've been watching it as we've been watching it, folks. You've been seeing those FBI, these DEA officials up and down, inside the door, outside the door, as we are waiting to potentially see Nicolas Maduro.
Hallie, the images are just remarkable as we anticipate that they will bring Nicolas Maduro out of that plane, his wife, as well. As you point out, this is a critical foreign policy test for this president. Reaction has been pouring in throughout the afternoon. And some of what we're hearing from his allies, Hallie, some of his staunchest allies, providing the most fascinating insight. I had a conversation with Senator Lindsey Graham, who, of course, stands firmly by the president. He said he supports this action. He supports the decision to take out Maduro. It's something he's talked about publicly for quite some time, Hallie. But he was also very clear. He said long-term operations are difficult. So he called upon the U.S. to focus on securing the oil, helping to rebuild institutions. But the sooner we can have an election, the better. That is telling, Hallie, because it speaks to just how complicated it is for President Trump, for the United States, to effectively take control of Venezuela. What does that look like? Will it require troops on the ground? Will Secretary of State Marco Rubio be in charge of that? Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. And in addition to the reaction that we're getting from some of the president's allies, we're also hearing from some of his allies turned critics. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's about to leave Congress a year before her term ends, really at the top of that list. Hallie, incredibly critical of this move by the president, quite frankly, critical of the president's entire pivot to foreign policy, saying that it goes against his promise of an America First agenda, his promise to focus on pocketbook issues here in the United States. She wrote earlier today, "This is what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. Boy, were we wrong." She adds, Hallie, regime change, funding foreign wars, and Americans' tax dollars being consistently funneled to foreign causes while Americans are consistently facing increasing cost of living, housing, health care, and learn about scams and fraud of their tax dollars is what has most Americans enraged. So as we watch these pictures, as we think about what happens next, Hallie, the criticism has been pouring in from Democrats who say this is frankly illegal because the president didn't seek congressional approval. One of the things we'll be watching for, how quickly will the administration go to Congress? Will the administration seek congressional approval for any future actions in Venezuela? How long does the president anticipate being in Venezuela, this transition process that he talks about, and how specifically will it unfold? One top Trump ally, Hallie, telling me that the president himself needs to provide more details to the American people.
Kristen Welker, our Meet the Press moderator, joining us in our rolling coverage here on NBC News. Kristen, thank you, and stay close to your camera. I know you will. I want to go now to NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris, who is joining us now. And Misty, there is something incongruous with what we're watching here. On the one hand, we are seeing these images that are being broadcast around the world of this plane carrying, based on our sources, Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife after this military operation to extract them from Venezuela, arriving in the U.S., on U.S. soil, as he is set to face these drug trafficking and narco-terrorism charges. On the other hand, as we're seeing some movement here in the doorway, the next steps here will be prosecutors for the Southern District of New York doing what those prosecutors do all the time, right? Working through this indictment, working through many of these legal motions and procedures.
Absolutely. And the next thing we're going to see relatively quickly, as soon as Monday, Hallie, is an arraignment where he and will be faced with the charges. The charges will be formally read. A plea will be entered, and we will be off to the races in the procedure that any criminal case will go through for something so spectacular. The procedure will be typical of a prosecution in a federal court. So you'll have the arraignment, and then you're likely to see a flurry of motion practice by Maduro and also certain challenges relating to his extraction from Venezuela, how this happened, whether or not congressional approval was required. The administration will argue that this was execution of a warrant, an arrest warrant that's it's been around for 5 years. There will be challenges based on head of state immunity. And there will be a critical question about whether or not he is being prosecuted for private criminal activity versus public policy. And so some of the comments President Trump has made today may come into those arguments. And then we'll be in the discovery process and ultimately at a criminal trial in the Southern District.
Okay, walk me through the next 48 hours then, Misty, to your point about the potential, and I want to be very clear, we don't know for sure, we don't know anything firm at this point yet, but the potential for an arraignment for Nicolas Maduro as soon as maybe Monday in court in the Southern District here. What happens between now and Monday, Misty? Let me say this, what would typically happen in an instance like this?
So in an instance like this, he will be in custody. He will be brought to a jail. He will be booked just like any other person who is being arrested on an arrest warrant. He will be told that he has the opportunity to get a lawyer. He will likely get a lawyer in these next 48 hours. And then the next step will be those formal charges at an arraignment relatively quickly. There are time limits to hold somebody without formally moving forward with that arraignment process. So this is going to be just an extraordinary thing to watch, but he will likely be booked at the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Misty, would there be an elevated security posture here for somebody like Maduro in an instance like this when it comes to these court proceedings?
Yes, most certainly. There will be security procedures. This is, of course, a high-profile case, but it's even further than that. We know that these are narco-terrorism charges. We know that he is a public figure. We know that there's controversy surrounding the arrest. And so there will absolutely be heightened security procedures, most definitely relating to every aspect of this case. I think we will see ultimately those procedures in place very, very quickly because of the nature of this arrest and ultimately prosecution.
Misty, as it relates to what happens after a potential arrangement, whether that's Monday, whether that's next week, whatever the case may be, and again, we don't have the reporting yet to back that up, as this is obviously still early hours, literally in this process here. What is a timeline for a trial this high profile, for a trial of this magnitude moving forward?
So in general, if there's the option to either waive a speedy trial, every defendant is entitled to a speedy trial. In a case like this, it's likely that that will be waived because you're talking about a tremendous amount of discovery and information. Just to read that 25-page indictment, the level of detail going back decades with allegations relating to this case, I think you're likely to see a case like this will not go to trial for maybe 2 years. And remember, one of the issues that will be at the forefront when we step into the SDNY for that agreement, whenever it may be, that being the next procedural step, will be whether or not bail will be granted. In a charge like this, in general, it would not be, but there will be arguments relating to that. So we're going to see all of these procedural steps.
I just want to point out here that we are seeing now more activity here, a line of about a half a dozen officials walking down off the stairway. And I want to just point out, if your screen is looking a little bit grainy, that's not you, that's everybody. As night is falling here, it's a little tricky to get that kind of video in from the choppers up from that aerial perspective here. But we are seeing now more activity. The plane's been on the ground for roughly 50 minutes, just about. And so we had seen just about 4:45, 4:50 Eastern time, a number of officials walking onto the plane. You are now seeing some of them walking off. It is going to be very difficult to tell faces here, but we're going to stay on this. We're going to keep an eye as we are seeing some activity now in the doorway, as we have with us here Richard Engel, Keir Simmons, Courtney Kube, Kristen Welker, Julie Sirkin, Monica Alba, and more. And I'm looking to see if that's a photographer, perhaps, that's with the team, somebody on the steps there. Somebody appears to be holding up a phone, taking a photograph here as I bring back in Richard Engel. This is a little bit of a tricky one, Richard. I just want to be honest here because it is dark, night is falling. But obviously, this is the most activity we've seen since we saw those officials enter the plane. Again, sources tell us Nicolas Maduro and his wife are on this plane after that extraction from Caracas just about 13, 14 hours ago.
As you talked about some of the procedural steps that he'll have to go through, how he'll be booked, most likely he'll be fingerprinted, photographed, he'll be treated like someone who's been arrested and is now facing serious charges. But there is nothing normal about this case. The legal system may treat it that way, but this is an extraordinary event, sending in Delta
Richard,
forces and dozens of helicopters to try and... Yes, go ahead, Hallie.
I just want to point out here that some of our eagle-eyed team members have spotted there appears to be somebody perhaps with shackles around the legs coming down the stairs. Again, tough for us to see as this is now backlit from the light on the stairs. But I wanted to point that out as we are watching this now live unfold at Stewart Airport, about an hour and a half, 70 miles north of Manhattan.
Allie, I'm bending now right now because I'm trying to brighten my screen a little bit so I can get a clearer image of that shot to see if I can see anyone in shackles. But that is exactly what I would expect, because they want to show that he is a prisoner, similar to when they arrested the cartel bosses in Mexico, in El Chapo, or when prisoners are detained in El Salvador and they're trying to show dominance and they release the photographs of these prisoners in headlock positions. It's about showing that this person who lived in a palace, who was apparently extracted from his palace while trying to get to safety, has now been humbled and is being brought before an American court of law. It is in this case, a legal move, but it is also very much a political move. This is a political decision to go in and change a government. I'm sure that Maduro's lawyers, whether they're court appointed or otherwise, will be arguing that this was political act, that this was an illegal act, and he will have allies. There will be allies around the world, serious world leaders who will agree that what happened is not a precedent that they want to see followed.
And Richard, I want to point out, as our aerial camera now has zoomed in on the center of this crowd, you see that person walking, and we're being extremely careful here, of course, because it is so difficult to see, but in what appears to be that light-colored gray sweatshirt, which would comport with what we saw in that image of Nicolas Maduro that President Trump in the White House had sent out earlier. You had seen people, you see it now as they enter the light there, obviously in the gray sweatshirt.
I'm looking at it.
Yep. Being walked
and seems
in
to
by
be
these
ambling,
officials now.
shuffling, definitely in shackles. Yeah, I'm holding the image right up close, and he's also the only person dressed differently, surrounded by a whole, maybe there are 24 officers around him, and wearing the gray sweatshirt. Hands seem to be bound in front of him, feet moving as if they're shackled. It appeared, does he have a blindfold over his face, or is he wearing some sort of baseball cap as well?
We know that in the image that was tweeted out by the White House earlier, he was wearing a pair of dark, what appeared to be blacked out sunglasses. He had ear protection on, ear covering, and his hands had been handcuffed. You're getting this look now inside this facility where you are seeing, obviously, what appear to be members of the military. We know DEA, we know FBI, as they are now shutting that door, Richard, potentially ready for the next part of the transport for Nicolas Maduro. Again, we saw that individual there in that what
amazing
appeared to be
pictures,
that gray,
Hallie.
light-colored sweatshirt. Yeah.
Amazing picture. It feels like we are almost spying on this moment as the camera is going left and right. I can't remember a similar moment where we've seen what would be a perp walk, but from this high perspective, where you can get a sense of how many officers were involved. There were dozens of officers who were escorting him in as he shuffled into that hangar or that building next to the airfield, and now in custody.
The feet is frozen, it appears.
These,
yeah.
The feed is frozen, but the image lives on, and this image will be seen and be broadcast. I can almost guarantee you it will be leading many broadcasts in Latin America tonight, tomorrow night, and many days to come. There will be those who say that this was an act of American imperialism, that America overreached, and that America is stealing Venezuela's oil. And if you look online, you'll already see many people saying things like that this is an act of aggression and theft by President Trump. And others who feel that this was a dictator who deserved this, who has imprisoned many on false charges, who has robbed Venezuelans of their livelihoods, who has bankrupted the country. So these will be divisive images, but now you're seeing them again. That is clearly one man standing apart, walking differently, behaving differently, in shackles.
And we have obviously at the center of that phalanx of officials there, and you saw some individuals walking backwards, holding what looked like phones up, perhaps taking video. I want to bring in Courtney
Exactly, and we will see that video.
Yeah. We will see. I'm certain of that, Richard, if past is precedent here. Richard, stand by for a second. Let me bring in Courtney here, our senior national security correspondent. Courtney, a couple of things to note here. And again, we're being extremely careful because we want to let the reporting drive what we know. We can see these images, Court, right? This is a replay of what just happened maybe 6 minutes ago here. We're going to see that big door to this facility close. Couple of points to make here. It was our understanding, based on sources, that both Maduro and his wife, who also is obviously part of this indictment from the Southern District, were on that plane back to the United States. Again, difficult to see individuals here, but that's one point to note is where she might be or where she might be headed. And then second is where Maduro heads next. It had been our reporting, based on multiple officials talking with NBC earlier, that Maduro would then be taken to New York City, rather, where he will begin the process of being booked, and that our legal experts have described what happens from their court.
Yeah, that's right. The assumption is that at some point, I don't know if there'll be any sort of a processing here at Stewart International Airport in New York, and then he'll be taken to New York City. either by car or I would think potentially by helicopter. And to your point, we've watched this video a couple of times now, and yes, it is definitely grainy and difficult to discern individuals, but the fact that there are so many people in uniform there helps a little bit because it makes those civilians stand out more. And I don't see any indication of his wife at this point. So we're trying to figure out exactly what that could be, if she was still on the plane, if maybe we just don't see her there or what. But I am really struck by, as you and Richard were just saying, the huge number of law enforcement officials who are accompanying what appears to be Nicolas Maduro.
Courtney Kuby, our senior national security correspondent. Court, thank you very much. Let me bring in now my colleague, NBC News correspondent Gadi Schwartz, who is joining us now. And Gadi, when you look at this, and again, I want to just lay it out here, that plane had been on the ground for about an hour. 15 minutes in, so about 9 minutes ago, we saw a flurry of activity at the doorway, and we saw this group of people, you see them here in that live image from above, walk down the stairs, very slowly walk across the tarmac into that building at the facility at Stewart Airport. Again, that is north of New York City by about 70 miles. At this point, we believe that Maduro may end up in New York City, be transported there. But obviously, a lot of questions about where this goes. One thing is certain, Gadi, these are images that are tonight reverberating around the world.
Thank you, Hallie. You're looking at video from Stewart Airport in New York. We just saw former Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife getting off a plane under heavy guard in New York. Those are the videos, the images that you're seeing there. Officials say they are soon going to be processed on federal charges of narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, and weapons offenses. After that, they're going to reportedly be transported to a high-profile federal prison in Brooklyn. We've got moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, who is joining us live. Kristen, I mean, these images here, the optics of a head of state being escorted into U.S. custody while the entire world watches. These images meaning so many different things to different people, the allies, U.S. adversaries, to an often divided U.S. public. How do you think this is all about to play out on the world stage?
Well, the world is certainly watching this, Scotty, and we're starting to get reaction pouring in from around the world. For example, from Russia, which has been quite critical of this move to depose Nicolas Maduro. We are also obviously getting reaction from allies of the president here at home in Congress, his rivals. It's largely falling along party lines, I can tell you, Gotti, as we continue to watch these extraordinary images out of New York, where Nicolas Maduro has now arrived in the United States, expected to be arraigned in the coming days. And it's notable, some of the president's top allies, like Senator Lindsey Graham, very supportive of this move to remove Nicolas Maduro, at the same time acknowledging the challenges ahead, saying that long-term operations are difficult, he says, but the sooner we can have an election, the better, really underscoring the idea that he believes the best-case scenario is for President Trump, who announced earlier today the United States would effectively run the country, to do so in as quickly and efficiently as possible, to be able to hold elections as quickly as possible. Of course, we're getting a very different reaction from Democrats, many of them accusing President Trump of effectively breaking the law because he did not go to Congress. They believe this was an illegal act because Congress did not approve of this action, was not briefed beforehand. So that's part of the debate that I think we'll see play out here on the domestic stage in the coming days, weeks, and months. And then, notably, we are starting to hear from some in the president's MAGA base, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, who had that remarkable break with President Trump over the very fact that she feels as though he has abandoned his America First agenda with too much of a focus on foreign policy. She posted earlier today, this is what many in MAGA thought they voted to end. Boy, were they wrong, calling on the president to refocus on issues like the economy, like healthcare, those pocketbook issues that she believes.
So we have this. What I'll do is try to see if I could get some of the outcome. Let me see if I could get when this whole thing started. So what I wanted to show you was when President Maduro got into the States. So that was what I just showed you. NBC just helped us with that. Our partners from there helped us showing that. And let me see. I would want to go to X and show you some of the videos or some of the visuals. I will try my best to see. I did have this post I need to share with you guys. So okay, so this is what I want to show. This is some so the Boeing. This is what brought the president. Boeing 757-223. This is what it belongs to the Department of Justice. So this is what was carrying the president, the former president of Venezuela. So yeah, this is so they were tracking it, right? So the Boeing started a journey. So as you can see, just flying him all across to that is New York. So as Saint Defender was tracking, this is what on the flight radar was also showing. So this is it. So I would want to also show you. So again, this is also the flight, the Boeing, which also this former Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro has just landed at New York Stewart International Airport. So the NBC already showed us when he was even getting out from the Boeing, the plane. So showed you earlier. And so when they were having the press conference, Trump's press conference, the general gave us a bit more detail. So these are kind courtesy Saint Defender from Saint Defender. These are some of the F-22 Raptors that took or participated in this action or this strike. So more than 10 of them. And F-22 is American most advanced stealth fighter designed to penetrate hostile airspace undetected, suppress air defenses, and dominate the skies before other forces move. Its stealth, sensor fusion, and air-to-air superiority make it ideal for disarming radar networks and ensuring total air control. So this was one of which the F-22 where the general made mention of. So they had more than 100. So these were some of it. And let me see if I could also. So most people are attributing the reason why US did this too. So the whole worldwide, the country which has the largest oil reserves in the world is Venezuela. They have more than 300 billion barrels. So this is it. This is 300 billion barrels of oil reserves that they have. So the most is Venezuela, then the second is Saudi Arabia. Oil reserves by country, Venezuela's lead. They are 300 billion barrels. And Saudi Arabia is 267, Canada is 171, Iran is 158, Iraq is 143, Kuwait 102, United Arab Emirates is 98, Russia it's has 80, and the US has only 35. So some people are also attributing to them to this is the reason why US did, but as the president said, this is not the reason. Yes, they had different reasons of doing that, but these are some of the reasons people are attributing to them. So I wanted to show you this as well. So you remember when the CIA, the general, when the general was speaking, he made mention that somewhere in November, December, they deployed CIA officials. So this is a video showing. Let me see if I could. Okay, so this is a video. According to the CIA had eyes on Maduro months before today's strike. So according to the New York Times, CIA officers were quietly deployed to Venezuela as early as August, tasked with trafficking Nicolas Maduro's movements, habits, windows of vulnerability, the boring details that decide outcomes. That timings matter. By late summer, Washington wasn't reacting to a crisis. It was preparing options, intelligence first, policy later, while public diplomacy stalled and sanctions churned. So this also explains the operational confidence. You don't move fast, claim 0 U.S. fatalities, and talk about perfect weather unless you already know the target schedule better than he does. Bigger picture, this is how U.S. power looks like. So this is from Mario Naofo. So you heard the CIA, no, the general, when he was during the press conference, he made mention of this. So I wanted to show you this before we end our show today. I will try my best if I could also get more details. I will see if we still have that. Will be good. I don't know. Okay, let me see if. Okay, I don't know if this is.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has just posted a statement on Truth Social. This is the first public acknowledgement by the United States. I will read it for you. Just seeing this pop up on my phone as we speak while texting back and forth with senior.
Let me see. Okay, this is what I was. What you were watching.
And you asked, was this coordinated? It could only have been coordinated with at least some people who turned on Maduro because the people knew where he was. They knew where his family was. It sounds like he is still alive, and I would not be surprised if we see him in front of an American court.
I would want to get you the main one you're watching.
I'm Peter Alexander with this NBC News special report.
I don't know if I could. I don't know where this thing. Okay, if I can see it, what I'll do is, I don't know. Okay. I was just watching this, so I don't know if it is still here. Let's see if I could watch. We could get this from here.
Amiga me llamó, yo quedé en shock, yo no me lo creía.
You said a friend called you, you were in shock?
Sí, yo entré en total shock, yo no me lo creía, yo pensaba que era otra mentira, cuando de repente no, o sea, le pregunté a mi hermana, mi papá me...
You thought it was a lie, you talked to your family members, you kept asking them?
Sí, y resulta que sí, estaban bombardeando Fuerteventura, estaban bombardeando La Carlota. Y...
It was true,
so this Colombia, Bogotá,
Venezuela.
Sí, o sea, fue algo
impactante. I'll be ending the stream very soon.
Y después fue que caí en cuenta que o sea, estaba sucediendo lo que todos estábamos esperando.
And I realized what was happening, she said, Gotti. And I want to ask you, te quiero preguntar, hay alguna gente que piensa que los Estados Unidos no deben haber hecho esto en Venezuela. There's some people, critics of the administration, who feel that the United States should not have gone and done this in Venezuela. ¿Qué piensas de eso? What do you think of that? ¿Y qué le dice a la gente que piensa que los Estados Unidos no estaban supuestos de hacer eso? That the United States should not have done this.
Bueno, primero que todo, las personas que alegan de que Estados Unidos no debió haber hecho eso es por el tema de la soberanía.
Okay,
pero resulta que hace más de 20 años Venezuela no tiene soberanía porque no tenemos control de nuestros petróleos, no tenemos control de nuestros recursos naturales y nos han estado robando muchos años.